Dan Snave is a Canadian music person. He has released music under the names Manitoba, Caribou, and Daphne with an I at the end. He released his first album as Manitoba in 2001, and he released more after that. He changed to using Caribou after he was threatened with a lawsuit by an artist called Handsome Dick Manitoba, and reissues of the first two albums have been rebadged as being under the Caribou name. He has released since then six more albums as Caribou, but he's also released four albums as Daphne starting in 2012. Hi, my name's Dan. So, this was the second album released originally as Manitoba and re released as Caribou. So, the same album could be called either, credited either to Manitoba or to Caribou, but it is the same album. It's my first encounter with it, and I think with any of his music. And it's somewhat unusual. This is my fourth review that I'm recording this evening. I have just reviewed a jazz album, and then I reviewed a camera obscure album, which I was talking about the washy production in it, and then an MGMT album, which I talked about the washy production. Guess what? This also has a kind of washy production feel to it, in that individual things don't jump out as much as they do in what I think of as being kind of normal production. Um, but having said that, I think that this was a way that production went, at least for a while, and maybe it still does for certain kinds of music. Partly, though, with this, it's got that kind of feel because there's a lot of things going on. And so, actually, to have anything jump out is possibly counterproductive. Um, it's hard to describe and certainly hard to categorize. Actually, most of this is instrumental, but there is some bits of singing in here. A lot of the tracks have a kind of drone continuity going on. I guess you could call it psychedelic rock. It's kind of rockish. There's elements of folk. I think folkatronica has been used to describe this. There's elements of electronic, definitely. There's elements of kind of, acoustic instruments, noises, lots of things going on at once generally. And there's sometimes musically they've got different things going on that don't necessarily, you wouldn't think that kind of they're working together, but somehow it just kind of works. So there were certainly points in time where there were two sets of drums going on where they weren't actually in time with each other, and there were times when there was two tunes being played in different keys and at different times, and it's kind of stuff has been thrown together. Um, Feels a bit like a patchwork or a scrapbook or a decollage or something like that. It's just kind of, yeah, I want to do this because it's kind of pieces, bits and pieces. It's a raggedy, it's a coat of many colours, I guess. Um, the drums sometimes sound like they've been recorded in a garage. They've been kind of pushed into the background in the mix somewhat, but sometimes they're quite kind of funky and frantic, like some of the drumming on this album particularly. There's pads and filling of all sorts of kinds. There's snatches of individual instruments. There's a bit that I was listening to and kind of thinking about this, and it's kind of got a sampley feel in that it kind of cut off partway through the bits. There's sound effects. There's a bit in it that sounds like somebody's got a balloon with some air in it, is kind of pulling it and going tweet, 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 and making it kind of sounds. I don't no idea whether it was that or some kind of other effect. It's got a constantly moving on feel, actually, that I really like. It just kind of keeps going. Some of the tracks are very kind of multi-parts. Some of them are fairly long as well. As I said, there are occasional bits of singing. Actually, maybe there's more than occasional, but a lot of this is actually mostly instrumental, I would say. Sometimes the singing is very mushed and kind of backgrounded and processed. Sometimes not so much, but it's still not kind of sitting up in the mix. When I can hear the words, they're kind of mostly snatches and often repeated, so it feels like It's taken hook lines from choruses, and there's not kind of a discourse going on in the words. It's unusual. I think you might be getting that impression. It's unusual in a way that is not generally on my radar. So I do listen to some things that some people would think are unusual, but they're often quite, kind of firmly rooted in the prog rock scene. So this, I found, yeah, when I say listen, I'm not saying that it was an uncomfortable listen. And I actually quite enjoyed it, but it was quite new to me, and I had to kind of think fairly hard about what I was listening to. I also found it's a grower, so over kind of two listens and then another bits of listen as I wrote the notes for this, I found that as I was going through, I'm going, yeah, actually, I'm quite enjoying this. So decently enjoyed by me. A little bit of a stretch for me in terms of a little out of my comfort zone, but that's okay. That's a good thing. Um, and as always, at this point, I'd like to know what you think of this album. So please do tell me. I want to know what you think. Please do leave me a comment. And that's it from me for now.